All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Greetings from the Garden State, powered by the New Jersey Lottery. I'm your host, Mike Ham. We're here in Hoboken, New Jersey today with the CEO of Tech United New Jersey, Aaron Price. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. So this co-working space that we're in, it's pretty cool. We got a little podcast studio. We don't always, and I think you know this, like we don't really ever record in a studio.
Yeah.
Granted, this was kind of like a BYO Mike's type of studio, but it's cool. Like it's, you know, the sound's good. It's going to like look great.
This is a legit setup.
Yeah.
Shout out to Swev in Hoboken, the co-working space that the headquarters of Tech United. So we're a tech organization. This is a very tech forward space. So it's a good fit for us.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to do this again anyway. But do you live locally to the Hoboken area?
I do. I didn't expect that I would be in Hoboken so many years. I moved here like a lot of people do. It was a little bit after college, but when I was much younger.
Yeah.
Now I'm like 150. I've got two young daughters. We raise them here. It's a great place to be. We bike around. We're on the waterfront a lot. We run into people walking everywhere. So it's there's a strong, tight-knit community feel in Hoboken that I've been really drawn to.
Yeah, for sure. And we just finished. We just did Jersey Fest a couple weeks ago, and like spending a lot of time.
Congrats on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was awesome. We had a great time.
Looked awesome. Sorry I couldn't be there. I wanted to.
It's all right. Next time. We already have a date set for 2025, so we'll make sure we get you out for that.
We will be there.
Yeah. But spending time like in Jersey City in this area, I mean, not that I've been here quite a bit before that.
Yeah.
But just the last few months, it's been like...
We got a good thing going out here, right?
It is pretty cool. Like the food scene's great. The people are great. It's just like a cool vibe, and I think Jersey City, which you kind of start like lumping different areas together, I think it's like one of the top, like at one point was voted one of the top 5 food cities in the country.
Yeah.
Which is pretty dope.
You may have mentioned this because you do a lot more of this stuff, but the best pizza in New York City is in Jersey City.
That's true.
Like I think Time Out New York.
Yeah.
I'm not just making that up.
No, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we love that.
We get a bad rap over here, but we think we can hang.
I know. We only get a bad rap from people that just like don't know what we're all about. They come in, they fly in, and then they're, getting on the turnpike right outside the airport there, and that's what they see, which I get doesn't look great, but it's, when we talked with Wes at Choose, he explained why that corridor is one of the most important corridors in the state.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool to kind of look at it through a different lens. But anyway, we're here to talk about you. So
we can talk about anybody.
I know. Yeah.
I like Wes. Also Hoboken resident.
Yes, that's true. I just had lunch with Wes last week, actually. So yeah, we'll shout out Wes Matthews from Choose. But let's talk a little bit about kind of what you do. Let's do like a little bit of a background.
Sure.
So that people kind of understand who you are, and then we'll get into the Tech United stuff and Propelify and everything else. Are you a Jersey guy, like born and raised?
Yeah, born and raised.
Okay.
Went to Milburn High School.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Been an entrepreneur my entire life. Started my first real business with my brother in Milburn High School. We patented a weightlifting device.
Interesting.
We used to be able to do lots of pull-ups and dips, and so we wanted to add more resistance to our bodies, and so we invented this thing called the Body Weight Plus, which allows you to add weight to your body, the body weight, hence Body Weight Plus.
Sure.
And so that was I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. That was my first real business. We sold carabiner keychains. So I'm 46. So this was I was in high school in 92 to 96.
Yeah.
To raise money to pay for the patent, I sold carabiner keychains, which were super popular then. Although they still have some left today.
Yeah, of course.
So I sold those to my friends to raise the money for the legal fees, which we were able to sell a lot of those things. In fact, that might have been a better business, it turns out. Because it turns out most people can't do pull-ups and dips with their own body weight, their own natural resistance.
I'm one of them. Yeah. I know that for sure.
And so what we didn't know the term at the time, but the total addressable market for that product was very small, but we had a lot of fun. I've been doing entrepreneurial stuff and mostly in tech ever since.
Yeah. What? You start this business with your brother. Like, what was it? Just because you had a need and you're like, hey, we want to do just like increase the weight kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like parents, family, were there entrepreneurship from there, or like how'd you figure it out?
I think the entrepreneurship gene or entrepreneurial gene comes more from my mom. My dad was a doctor. My parents were super supportive of the entrepreneurial. I don't even want to say itch. Like it's in my DNA. Like the pursuit of entrepreneurship and the risk that comes along with it. They've always been super supportive, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But for me, the motivation was owning my destiny. That's a fallacy because there, as you know, and I'm sure continuing to learn, there are. It's easier to have a day job.
Totally.
As a 9 to 5. It's a much easier. It's much. There are different things that people are unhappy with.
Sure.
Some similar, but it is. You leave work and you're not worried about whether you're going to make payroll or pay your mortgage or whatever. I mean, you may be worried about those things for other reasons, but not about your steady paycheck and the other areas that come with that. And so, anyway, we'll get into that. But I've always been interested in having control of my time and having sort of the opportunity to create things and have the upside associated with creating value. And so that's been the draw. That's evolved in many interesting ways, but that was the root of it in the beginning.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then from there, you said it was tech really after that. Like, what were those first few things that you were kind of getting involved with? And when the entrepreneurship side of the tech world.
So I was always the guy that was brainstorming, what if we do this and wouldn't it be cool if that, with friends in college and with, a lot of the people in my fraternity. I was like the guy people would come to with like, hey, what do you think about this thing?
Yeah.
The person who I was randomly paired with to be my roommate freshman year, who's still to this day probably my best friend, he and I started something called Deliver You in 1990, either 7 or 98. We're not sure the exact starting point, but it's one of the first, if not the first. There was some debate among those of us who started this industry. One of the first online food ordering services. So the ability to actually order food online and have that order get transmitted to a local restaurant was something that we were doing at the University of Maryland in 98 when most people still had dial-up. We did, universities had T1 lines, which is what we used. We were faxing orders into local restaurants. The number one question I would get from restaurant owners when I would walk in the door, not even question, feedback is like, no one's going to want to order food online. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the world is changing. And
sure.
There are if you think about the restaurant industry then and even still now, but especially then, limited resources. So the ability to get a printed order so for accuracy issues made a lot of sense. Out of college campus, there's a huge influx at certain times of day,
right?
Especially late at night for lots of reasons. But
of course,
people are out having Coca-Colas and they get hungry, and so
Listen, I've had my share of Coca-Colas for sure.
And so anyway, it was a great run. We were processing a few thousand orders a month by the time we graduated. Pursued that for a few years, sold it. Great, I learned an enormous amount. We'll see where this conversation goes, but a really exciting time to be involved in tech. It was like just the beginnings of where the web was going, and it was a really great experience. And I've been doing, we can talk about some of these things, but I've been basically pursuing how does technology impact society and where are there opportunities for change and impact and disruption ever since.
Yeah. What was there like, obviously like 97, 98, I was 7, 8 years old. And just trying to message with on AIM Messenger.
AOL-IM. That was I still own AOL-IM.com, which was more commonly called AIM, but yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think that was just kind of what were we doing? Really nothing of significance really, but exploring kind of how, the web works and all that kind of stuff. And was there when you obviously doing the entrepreneurship stuff, that was a really new thing. And at the time, I feel like a lot of people were just like, it's not going to stick, which, obviously now, just look at what we're surrounded by. It's stuck. It's stuck for sure.
It's stuck.
Yeah. What was the thing that kind of clicked for you when it came to tech or whether it's, web-based ordering or some of the other stuff that you got yourself into after
scale. The idea that you could have a worldwide, first, a few things. One is, you could have a global reach from anywhere in the world, which, ironically, I run an organization focused on New Jersey. We're talking about New Jersey, and we'll come back to the New Jersey opportunity here.
Yeah.
But I was immediately drawn to the idea that you could put something out literally to the world from, a computer in a dorm room in the University of Maryland, which is where I was at the time. And I remember a specific moment where it kind of dawned on me that you could be, I think the example in my head was, if I wanted to start a Best Buy competitor, I need to acquire enormous amounts of real estate around the country and have a physical store in all of these geographies. But if I owned bestbuy.com, or if I was opening a competitor to Best Buy, not literally bestbuy.com, but if I wanted to launch an online version of this, I could have the exact same size of a footprint and compete with a Best Buy type organization,
right,
just with a domain. Like, you don't have hundreds or thousands of those retail spots. And I mean, which sort of sounds silly almost to vocalize now, but the idea that you could, you have the same starting point. Obviously, you need an enormous amount of resources. Like, it's not just the domain.
Yeah.
But as far as user acquisition goes and your ability to have a massive impact and to generate scalable outcomes, I just was massively drawn to the possibilities that existed because the internet gives you that kind of sort of even playing field.
Yeah.
So and then the idea, I also then and even still now very much believed in a global economy, and there's complicated political matters around how the idea of outsourcing jobs. But we've been hiring from in New Jersey and around the world. I've been doing that since around that time of 1998.
Yeah.
And again, the web makes some of these things possible. For a long time, another business I was working on was the homepage on what was then Elance, and now is Upwork.com, because we were hiring a lot of people from around the world, and we couldn't have afforded local labor, and so this gave us opportunities to work with people everywhere, and they were hugely grateful for those opportunities. And now we put a lot of that back into the local economy. But for me, the web represents that sort of, just it's even now has changed a lot.
Yeah.
So, but at the time, it was very, very raw. It was like Craigslist, and it was a whole different world.
Yeah.
And so I've always been really drawn to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so what was the name of the food delivery service?
Deliver You.
So from there to Tech United.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a second. Were a lot of the, entrepreneurial things that you kind of got yourself involved in between that stretch of time web-based? Was that
all of them?
Okay.
So I won't go into all the stories, but the highlights are Deliver You. We exited that. Took some time, started something called eFordables. They sold excess inventory online, mostly turned into Harley-Davidson motorcycle parts. Was able to sell that. Took some time off. My wife was working in Johnson & Johnson. Shout out to another New Jersey-based company.
That's right.
We're big fans of them.
Yeah.
She had an opportunity to go to Shanghai for a year, so she and I went to China for a year, which was super awesome.
That's cool.
That was the best title I've ever had in my career, which is trailing spouse. That should be your goal.
Yeah,
be a trailing spouse.
Cool. Yeah.
Especially for J&J. They take care of stuff.
Sure.
Living in China was super cheap. They paid for everything. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, just a good time. That was just a good part of our lives.
Sure.
Came back and started a community-based business focused on that DIYer that I had learned about from eFordables. Like the Harley guys were fixing their stuff and sharing photos. So we started a community for them to share things. That didn't really work out. There were a few others. And the theme that brings us to where we are today is it was very lonely. There were not a lot of people doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
And so most of my friends were doing what was at the time much more traditional professional careers, and entrepreneurship comes with lots of challenges. There's a guy named Steve Blank who wrote a book called The 4 Steps to Epiphany, which is about the technology and startup industry. Talks about the these big peaks and then the trough of sorrow.
Yeah.
And you live in that trough of sorrow for a long time, and then there might be some big peak, and then there's this, then you're working really hard, things don't go your way, but if you have the staying power, you can often, not always, but often figure it out. It's a very challenging career path.
Yeah.
So, and I really hadn't found any sense of community at all. I mean, at one point I had a warehouse in West New York, no windows, worked with mostly like high school kids after school, were processing inventory. And I remember having this moment, like, what the hell am I doing? And I found this New York startup community very early on. And literally for the first time I was in the room thinking, I was at a startup week in New York, the first one in New York City. And I was like, these people see the world the way that I do.
Yeah.
And understand the issues that I've been dealing with and get just as excited about some new like database thing that comes out that I've been like thinking about or working on. That none of my peers or like friends, it wasn't what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it's helpful for sharing ideas. It's helpful for you to save time and not making the same mistakes that somebody else has just been through the last few years of their own career. I made some fantastic friends who I still have today. And so anyway, getting involved in the New York community, I started going to lots of events in New York City. was kind of tired of going to that side of the river, and I was like, maybe I could start something in my backyard, which was Hoboken. I started what was originally called the Hoboken Tech Meetup, just to do literally at a bar 2 blocks from here that was then called Trinity. It's no longer there, but hoped I could bring in founders to talk about what we were working on. The format was 3 startups would pitch, 30 minutes of networking, and then a featured speaker. 30 minutes of networking, 3 startups, and the speaker. But then all 3 of those things in one night. Often the meetups are one of those things. And I was like, let's just get this all done at once.
Right.
And to my surprise, that just took on a life of its own. It wasn't intended to be a business, but it sort of turned into a nonprofit of its own. We changed the name to the New Jersey Tech Meetup. It's still one of the largest groups of entrepreneurs in New Jersey, besides Tech United, 9,000 members in there. Built my network out and inspired the idea for a much, much larger event, which is the Propelify Innovation Festival. Happens to be coming up this June 27th. As we host on the waterfront in Hoboken. And that event is 5,000 entrepreneurs, all things tech. We can get into that. But this whole thing started with, serving a need that I had, which was I need a community of people to share what I'm working on. And if you think about all the infrastructure that exists using a place like Johnson & Johnson, besides the income, a steady paycheck and the benefits that come along with the compensation side of the things, there's a social component that happens at a so-called normal job around meeting your peers and talking through what are you working on and what are some of your ambitions, and hey, who wants to go to the holiday party and anybody want to go to happy hour,
right? And automatically have something in common work at the same place.
Similar interest. And, especially the larger company, there's like classes of people, meaning classes of start dates, not in hierarchy so much, but then you sort of ascend together and there's a camaraderie to it. When you're an entrepreneur and you're working on a small business, it might just be you. There's none of that social stuff. There's none of that. I didn't have holiday parties for like a decade. None of that.
Right.
And so the idea of a community, in my case, it was through this meetup group and other things I got involved with, brought a lot of that social piece that was missing from the day job, so to speak. And so for me, it really brought a sense of community. By the way, quick side note, Venmo was pitched at our very first New Jersey Tech Meetup.
Oh, wow.
And we just recently pulled the deck and we were looking at it, and so we've had a lot of those go through. Not many companies you've definitely never heard of, but we had some real superstars come through, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about New Jersey, because you do the one in New York, and then obviously you start the one in Hoboken, and then it grows to, like the whole state, really. Then, what Tech United is and all that kind of stuff, and how, like, from your perspective, the level of, you mentioned, like Venmo being pitched at the very first one, but just like the level of, I don't know if sophistication is the right word.
Maturity, maybe,
of like the people that are involved in something like this. Because we've talked about it on the show already in the past, and like right now we're kind of in a stretch where we had, Michael Johnson from NJII. We've talked about the Helix. We were just at Hackensack Meridian with Jose Lozano, and we've done like the stuff with Wes at Choose, Alex Richter at the SciTech City. So we've done like a lot of stuff in the tech kind of, higher level stuff that I think maybe the average New Jerseyan may be unaware of. But, there's more PhDs and engineers that live here than any other place, I think, in the country or the world or whatever per capita.
Yeah, that's right.
So talk about like the level of maturity of, the people that are kind of coming through, whether it's Tech United, whether it's Propelify, like all the stuff that you're doing, the people that you're interacting with.
Absolutely. So let me finish the circle of how we got here, and then I'll address that specifically.
Yeah.
So the New Jersey Tech Meetup explodes. From 2009 to 2016, I started the Propelify Innovation Festival, which is named after bringing together the community of people who propel ideas into action. There are a lot of people who have ideas and they sit on the sidelines and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, and they never actually do it. This is about people who propel things into reality. 2019, it gets acquired by what was the New Jersey Tech Council, nonprofit trade group built to build the innovation community in New Jersey. Very obviously, based on what you've heard here, very closely aligned to what had become my mission.
Yeah.
And so it made a ton of sense for us to team up. Board gave me a lot of leeway in thinking about the next chapter of this organization, including rebranding as Tech United New Jersey. And so our mission is to inspire entrepreneurs, innovators, and instigators to build a better future for all. And I want to highlight, we've been talking about it, the Hoboken piece. There's certainly a stronghold in Hoboken, but we travel the state and serve the state and the region at large. Getting back to the level of maturity of the New Jersey market. So it's really it's interesting what's happening here. We do have the largest concentration of PhDs and engineers per capita than anywhere in the world. We lose a lot of that talent to other markets. In particular, we lose a lot of the starts in the startup component to other markets, namely New York City. And so we are working very, very aggressively to keep those people here. And that means that some of them live in New Jersey, but they actually start their businesses in New York because they see or think, for a variety of reasons, that there's a greater likelihood that they'll be successful there.
Sure.
And so we are working on a variety of things to keep them here, and we'll get into that. But that's part of a main area of our focus. As a bellwether to what that really looks like, so roughly $30 billion of venture capital is invested into the New York City startup community each year. Roughly I think it's 2.8 billion. Let's just round up, call it 3 billion. So just 10% of that amount that goes into New York goes into New Jersey. We see that as an enormous problem.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get the starts, they never grow into anything bigger. And so we are currently right now working on a bill to incentivize more angel tax investment in New Jersey. We're working on a bill to make it, this is nuanced and probably most of your listeners don't care, but there's a stock qualification that the federal government recognizes called qualified small business stock exemption. So that if you raise money, create a lot of jobs, and grow within a certain amount over, I think it's in 5 years, some of your founding stock is tax exempt. 45 of the 50 states in the country recognize that on a state level. New Jersey does not. So we are advocating to make it so that that's a thing. In fact, Michael Johnson himself dealt with this personally when he exited his company.
Yeah.
And so does every other New Jersey-based founder. So there are things like that aren't helping the cause. So we're looking at some policy issues that we think make financial sense. There's a social piece to this.
Yeah.
In places like Hoboken, Jersey City, Asbury Park, you're seeing this unfold, and certainly we'll do so more in New Brunswick at the Helix. I don't know if I mentioned Princeton, but there are lots of grassroots level activity that needs to happen on sort of that meetup level that then bubbles up to, hey, why don't we start a thing? And I met a guy who's got an idea, and we're working on an idea in a garage.
Yeah.
Is often not a literal garage, but it is about bringing together people locally in small groups who are interested and inspired around building ideas, or they spin off from some other larger company and go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did X, Y, Z? And so a lot of the activity of Tech New Jersey is focused around how do we get those groups together and how do we mentor people so that they don't make the same mistakes that I and hundreds or thousands of other entrepreneurs made the first time we built things.
Yeah.
I think there's an enormous amount of grit culturally that sets us up for success. If we can invest in the entrepreneurs and the community of entrepreneurs, I believe we can see that number, that sort of, I talked about the analogy of 10% of the venture capital. Like, I see a path to getting us to 20 or 30%, which is more in line with, I think, what we should be looking at.
Yeah. So when you're talking about, obviously you have a history of entrepreneurialism and all that kind of stuff, entrepreneurism.
Or ship, either one of those.
Entrepreneurship. There we go. Thank you.
Ship. One.
I talk for a living. But, kind of watching the trajectory of New Jersey itself, talk about stuff that you're working on now to kind of keep entrepreneurs here, people that are keep the starts here, like you said. Has there been a big change from when you were first kind of starting your stuff to now?
There has been a big change, and the pandemic accelerated thinking.
Yeah.
First, I would say when I mostly stayed out of the political arena for all these years, mostly on purpose. We've always invited the sitting governor to Propelify. Politics aside, we invited Chris Christie. He did not respond or attend. We've invited Governor Murphy. He has attended several times, and we've built a really strong relationship with the Murphy administration and the EDA. So regardless of what you think of Murphy, he is investing in this community and does show up. And I think that really matters. And it's a signal to both the state and the country that, leadership cares about this industry. There are areas, I think, where we differ on the best approach, but it matters a lot that he's out there talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I think we're moving in the right direction. I think there's, it's when your original part of this question was, the maturity of the state. We have all of the assets required for startups and technology to thrive. there's still a lot of, I think, unrealized potential, and we just want to make sure we can accelerate the adoption of what that potential is.
Yeah, for sure. We're not going to take a real break because I don't want to ruin the flow of the conversation. So I'm going to do a quick, this is the Greens for the RSA podcast. Just a reminder, we're here with Aaron Price. He's the CEO of Tech United, Mike Ham, powered by the New Jersey Lottery. So we're talking about your stuff. We're talking about entrepreneurism in New Jersey. We're talking about...
Let me interrupt you for a second, because I think what you're doing, and I'll shout out the advertiser. The fact that New Jersey Lottery supports this is really important. And I'm not saying it because I think people should go, well, great, go buy lottery tickets or don't. But here's why. Part of the issue in New Jersey is awareness. And in New York City, when you're a startup founder, the Wall Street Journal and often Forbes and others cover top 50 fintech startups in New York.
Yeah.
And that creates awareness, which creates, which ends up on landing pages, which means when someone from Prudential is let's make sure we're tracking the top 10, the interesting fintech companies that we may acquire.
Yeah.
Those articles show up, and that feeds the economy. So it's not just for the vanity of it. It's not just for the fun of it. In New Jersey, I won't name the names, but the article, the public, the journals that cover the startup community are not the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and Forbes.
Of course.
So creating in fact, we've had many of those editors at the Propelify Innovation Festival and other events who say, we our beat doesn't allow, literally verbatim, our beat doesn't allow us to cover New Jersey.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get the guy who does New Jersey to pay attention, but they usually talk about the politics. Business for us is in New York.
Yeah.
That's an enormous problem.
Yeah.
So shout out to the New Jersey Lottery, any of the other sponsors, because you are giving a lot of attention to what's going on in New Jersey, and that matters not just for the vanity of it, but because it's how we actually can drive some of these business issues. So quick aside, you didn't ask me to say any of those things, but it matters that we tell these stories and that we create more awareness, because people often are like, what is even going on in New Jersey? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's interesting because and we can go down this rabbit hole for a little bit, but it's interesting, before I started this show, I did not really realize quite how fractured the media and you talk about the awareness and everything like that was in New Jersey, because you watch, I remember my dad watching morning news every morning, and just didn't click in my head that was a New York based station, and same thing if you start going south, it's Philly based for the most part. And even some of, and again, I won't name any because I'm not affiliated with any, but there's many New Jersey based outlets in a variety of mediums that they'll talk about Eastern Long Island getaway destinations, and it's we have an entire shoreline of places you can go to, and stuff you're talking about with tech and all these things. That's one of the things that we talked about at lunch with Wes, was the awareness of all these things that are happening in New Jersey, like Sci-Tech City, and what Alex was explaining to me about that. It's I can't even wrap my head around what that's going to look like, but I'm excited about it. But I don't think enough people, really, that's a better way to say it, know about it, and just kind of bringing back, taking back control a little bit of what the narrative is and what we're talking about and what's actually happening here. I think that's a really important thing, and
I totally agree.
I've learned more about that over the last 2.5 years doing this show, is that there's a piece missing.
There is a piece missing. And a lot of us live in New Jersey, or we're drawn to a place like New Jersey for the proximity to New York. New York's a fantastic market. Nothing bad to say about it. It does suck up most of the media attention. Yeah. And that is part of the issue that I think that, we're talking about here. And so much, and I would say to your listeners, that doesn't mean that we need the Wall Street Journal necessarily to come knocking on our doorstep, but the more that people can share with their friends and neighbors and family, there's all these interesting things, that does create awareness that matters.
Yeah.
It matters when a startup is recruiting and people have heard of the company, or if they've heard of the co-working space, or they know that it's venture backed, there's a trust level and a brand level that helps. So a lot of that happens by default out of the gates in New York that we need more support around in New Jersey.
Yeah. And I do think, especially watching, like I said, watching kind of how it's evolved over the last couple of years, I do think it's kind of trending a little bit towards that, whether it's this show or some other shows that exist, there, or, but I think it's just kind of, ringing the bell over and over and over again, and making
it's a long game.
It's a long game for sure. And I mean, New York City's been New York City for
a while,
150 years, however long, so obviously there's an uphill battle, but, I do think that it's not, not possible. It's not.
It's very possible.
It's very possible.
It's very possible.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's talk about Tech United a little bit more in depth. Like describe
Sure.
like what it is, so people that are listening, like they've kind of got a little bit of a taste, but maybe more like kind of round it out a little bit for people listening.
Sure. Tech United is a nonprofit industry group that advocates for, to restate the mission, to empower entrepreneurs, innovators, and instigators to build a better future for all. What that means is we have some really large, flashy events like the Propelify Innovation Festival happening June 27th.
Which is this actually going to come out right before that.
Fantastic. Yeah. So if you're listening, then we'll even make the coupon code Mike for a free ticket for your listeners.
Cool. Thank you.
And we have an annual awards event that actually happens to be at White Eagle Hall this year.
Oh, great.
Where you hosted your event. It's called the Catalyst Awards that recognize leaders in business and tech. We have smaller events, private events. There's a lack of networking among business leaders in New Jersey, so we host a series of C-suite dinners that are often, some of the larger companies in New Jersey. We bring some of those folks together. It's shocking how few of them know one another.
That's pretty cool.
So that's helped drive, again, connectivity among the business community. We have a mentorship group for women and minority business leaders that helps them understand how they're building their businesses and prevent mistakes that people like me and others have made. We've launched a high school entrepreneurship program with a new entity we started called Better Future Labs, which I'll talk about. But to educate high schoolers in New Jersey about what does it mean to be an entrepreneur in technology, that you can actually do this in your own backyard, and that there's a group of people who want to help you succeed.
Yeah.
So, and there's more, but the overall goal is, or programs are, how can we advocate for New Jersey to thrive? How do we drive connectivity in the community? Whether it's you're a solo first-time entrepreneur, all the way up to you're on my board is the CEO of Verizon Consumer, Sam Path, if you've come across him, but fantastic business leader. And everything in between. So how do we create connectivity among those various stakeholders so that people can thrive here? And to be clear, this isn't about, while I do love the Jersey Shore and a lot of things about New Jersey.
Sure.
I'm not in this role because I'm a diehard New Jersey person. I'm in this role because I believe in the value of community, and that I believe in the business value that can happen when organizations like ours can accelerate those relationships. So if you are, this is a real example, if you are an early stage company working on something that Verizon or PSEG or Hackensack Marine Health or Barnabas or others are interested in, we have direct line of sight to the executive groups of all of those large organizations to help accelerate those relationships.
Yeah.
And I have been the entrepreneur, and I still would do this today, who would fly literally anywhere in the world to be in the room with my potential customer or acquirer. That's part of what Tech United can do for early stage companies. So there's an inherent real business advantage to being part of these communities. It's not just, hey, isn't it cool to be as good pizza in Jersey City? It's if you show up to these things, we can get you in the room with the right people. And obviously we vet, it's not, we don't introduce them all, but we vet them, and there's a value to the other side to make sure that, if we're introducing you to investors or corporates, et cetera, that we think there's a reasonable fit. But those kinds of things can, the lifeblood of early stage business is time and money. You often run out of, which is in effect called runway.
Yeah.
Startups often run out of runway. And if we can accelerate, getting in the door with a Verizon can take literally a year. If we can do it in a month or in 2 weeks, we can increase your runway and chances of success, et cetera. That also has the byproduct of creating value in New Jersey, which is obviously inherent to our mission. But I want to be clear, this isn't just like a feel-good New Jersey thing. This is there's a real business value here. And now I've completely forgotten the origin of your question. What does Tech United do? I think that's how we started.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which nailed it.
Okay.
Can you talk to me, maybe highlight like a specific example, kind of like when since you've been running Tech United, and if there's like things you have to leave out, that's fine. But like kind of putting it into like a real world type thing for people that are listening.
Sure. One of the things that when I came into this role with Tech United that we talked about was how do we create a differentiated advantage thing I just spent some time talking about, and partnered with, at the time, PSEG to create a startup challenge to express issues that they are seeing in their industry and then open up applications for startups to apply. And so it's an annual, we call these our Better X programs. So with them, we created the Better Planet program, named after this idea of building a better future. So Better X is how we come to market.
Yeah.
So the Better Planet program was, how does technology affect the world of climate change? And in particular with PSEG, they were interested, each year we've done a different challenge. That year was energy efficiency and decreasing the use of electricity. Gathered applications from around the country, preference for New Jersey, but we opened it to everywhere. A company called Window Skins applied, which is pretty low tech, but squarely in the wheelhouse of what a PSG actually was looking for. And this is a very small business. Not only did they win I think that year was a $50,000 cash prize, which obviously helps, especially when you're small.
Sure.
That was run in partnership with, at the time, CEO Ralph Izzo, who was super excited about accelerating that company into the PSG network and helping to deploy those basically energy-efficient window skin products that make homes more efficient throughout the network. So, we've heard from them many times over how much that meant to their business. And we've done that now, I don't know, maybe a dozen times with a bunch of different businesses to help accelerate them with different relationships. Others who, hacks, who, if you haven't spoken to them yet, I'm sure you'll run into them soon, met and invested in a company. So a student at Stevens has a really interesting company called Tandem, giant batteries to attach to cabs of tractor trailers to basically make them electrified. Super interesting technology and product. Was raising capital, was about to potentially move to New York or San Francisco, exhibited at Propelify, met Hacks, which is a global accelerator, but they were a sponsor at our event. Hacks ended up investing in Tandem. That kept them in New Jersey. Again, they so accelerated their business, brought in some capital, et cetera. I mean, I've got tons of these, but and they're not all startup focused. There are other things, policy related, big, other large corporate focused things, other ways we help service providers. But the core of this is, I talked about this before, how do we accelerate these relationships so you can be more successful more quickly? And those are two examples where, it's very personal for me. I have been in the seat where I was desperate for those relationships for whatever it was I was working on.
Yeah. So
I really understand what those founders are going through and can really appreciate how helpful those relationships are.
Yeah. No, I love that. And especially in the last 6, 7, whatever it's been, months, kind of doing this full time, like, maybe this is a little bit different, but at the same time, I think it's similar, trying to find, like, I don't do this for free. Like, there's ways that I need to actually pay my bills, like you were talking about before, and being able to kind of grease the skids a little bit on certain relationships and get in front of people faster, obviously is helpful.
Yeah.
Are you still doing your own stuff too, as far as, the entrepreneurial world? Or are you just kind of focusing more on this?
So I'm fully focused on Tech United New Jersey, but I've had that itch for a long time. Yeah. It's in me. I talked about this earlier. It's in my DNA. And fortunately, we started something as an organization last year that's helped scratch that itch, and I'm loving it. One of the things that we see is a lack of starts, right? We talked about this earlier. There's all these great assets. There's not enough companies starting. And so to help address that issue, we started something called a startup studio. It's called Better Future Labs. And what we do is we work with some of these corporate partners who tell us some of their pain points, some of their areas where they see friction. We then work with a community of entrepreneurs to come up with solutions to those pain points. Very quickly vet, hey, PSEG, if we built this XYZ product that you expressed some interest in, would you actually be a paying customer?
Yeah.
And there's a whole series of stage gates to understand, is this a real business? Is this just a consulting project, or is there nothing here? But if it gets to it might be a real business side, we act. Better Future Labs is a separate entity, but works closely, in partnership with Tech United. We act as the co-founder of that business. We put up to $500,000 behind that business. We build the early prototypes of that business. We have a head of people, a strategist, a technology co-lead, so that we can get these things off the ground. That's the nature of what a studio does. And so for me, getting back to your question, it's been completely invigorating because I can now continue to, instead of coming up with lots of ideas and going, well, not right now, which is what I've been doing.
I'm busy.
I'm like, I got a lot of ideas. Let's put them through this machine, and maybe one or two. Most of them, by the way, are terrible.
Sure.
Most of the ideas are terrible.
Yeah.
And not just mine, among the whole group of stuff that we come up with. But we expect sort of a 5% decent hit rate of maybe there's something there, and maybe just 1% or so actually turn into businesses. But it does give me an outlet to now, the creative outlet about wouldn't it be cool if we did this thing? And Justin Trugman, our co-founder and head of technology on the just outside these doors, he and I spent a lot of time brainstorming, like, do you think this would work? Do you think this would work? And we've got a few that are looking promising.
Yeah.
And again, bringing it back home, these now, should this be successful, these are built in New Jersey by New Jersey stakeholders, building jobs in New Jersey. So like, again, it's about this, like, how do we build best of breed, but it affects us locally.
Yeah.
And that's our goal. And so if we're sitting here in 10 years, success would be Better Future Labs kicked out, in 10 years, maybe 10 companies worth 9 figures or more each that employ hundreds or thousands of people and have created lots of, of commercial value. That would be an amazing win.
Yeah. I don't know why that's turning off. Let's take a quick break.
You got it.
The Mayo Performing Arts Center is the heart of arts and entertainment in Morristown, New Jersey. MPAC presents over 200 events annually and is home to an innovative children's arts education program. To see MPAC's upcoming schedule of world-class concerts, stand-up comedy, family shows, and more, head to mayoarts.org or just click the link in our show notes.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about the crew over at Make Cool Shit. These are the magicians who recently gave our podcast a jaw-dropping makeover. You know how we roll here at Greetings from the Garden State podcast, right? We're all about that Garden State attitude. Well, Make Cool Shit shares that same vibe, and they've got something absolutely epic to offer. It's called the Unlimited Cool Shit Design Subscription. It's a game changer, my friends. Imagine this: unlimited creativity, one flat monthly fee, and none of that boring stuff. It's like having your very own army of design superheroes on speed dial. Whether you're a fresh startup or a seasoned business looking to shake things up, the team at Make Cool Shit has got your back. It's all about making your brand sizzle, no matter where you are in your journey. So if you're ready to turn your ideas into mind-blowing realities, then it's time to connect with Make Cool Shit. You can check them out on Instagram at WeMakeCoolShit or visit their website, WeMakeCoolShit.co. Remember, that's co, not com. So going off that, I think it's interesting. And this is one thing that with the episode that we did with Jose at HMH and the Helix and NJI and all that kind of stuff, I think one of the things, because, like I mentioned before, the episode that comes out the week before this is like a legendary hot dog spot where people can actually like go and eat a hot dog, or maybe they've been there and like kind of know that story. And I think sometimes when we talk about these high level things, it's almost like the average New Jerseyan, like, do they really care? Or like, should they, why should they, all that kind of stuff. And I think your answer right there too, has kind of been like the same. It's obvious, almost like an obvious answer, but like impacting people's lives, creating jobs, keeping people here, and I think like the more that we're able to do that, the better, right?
Yes, the more that we're able to do that, the better. Yeah. And also, like, this is where the world is going.
Yeah.
So whether, you may have a job that you think is totally unrelated to technology. Like, that is a false premise. Every single thing we do gets affected by technology. And being knowledgeable about what's happening in or to your industry, being knowledgeable right now in particular about AI, will give you a career advantage. And so, I think, and if you're thinking about what your kids might be doing, like the industries have changed dramatically. As you've probably heard from lots of the folks you've talked to, like, our number one export is our talent.
Yeah.
And if we can own the fact that, or own the opportunity for young talent and infuse that more into the careers that can happen here, I think that we can do much better as a state. There's all the implications of what happened when basically the economy grows in the state, which it has been.
Sure.
But we've got to stay ahead of the tech curve on this and make sure that it's an appealing place to work.
Yeah. And I love that because it is an appealing place to work, in my opinion. That's why we do this show. I want to talk about Propelify before we kind of get wrapped up here. If someone were to go, what should they expect? Like, what happens there?
Yeah. So it's an outside festival on the waterfront in Hoboken.
Love that.
We get roughly 5,000 attendees throughout the day. There's a stage with talks. So we've got talks on AI, we've got talks on fundraising, we've got talks on hiring, we've got talks on what people call the imposter syndrome. I can go on and on. We've got people, a guy named Mark Laurie, who you may or may not have heard of, but started diapers.com, sold it to Amazon for like $500 million. Started jet.com, sold it to Walmart for $3 billion.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he's done all right.
That's not
Mark
bad,
happens to be a New Jersey native. He now lives in New York. I think he still has property in New Jersey, but he's speaking at the event. Great cool guy, an incredible visionary. Also happens to be a co-owner of the Timberwolves, and so he's got a lot of exciting things happening.
Yeah, I love this guy.
He's awesome. And we've got Carolyn Everson, who was the I forget her exact title, but basically the head of global partnerships at Meta. She went on to be the CEO of Instacart. Now she's on the board of Disney, Coke, and Under Armour. Like these two speakers happen to be New Jersey residents. We don't focus on New Jersey speakers. These two happen to be because they've just grown in my network more recently.
Yeah.
We've got founders who've raised lots of money, early stage founders. We've got a pitch competition on stage. So on the stage, you'll hear basically, education and inspiration around the tech industry. On the perimeter of the event, there's first a bar, there's food and drink. There are, I think we're up to now 70 some odd exhibitors doing all sorts of things in tech. AI is a huge area of focus for us. So, there's somebody that's doing an AI likeness business, meaning they can make it a bot that looks and sounds like you that they're putting to commercial use. So it's not meant to be like a scary steal your identity thing, but it's a way to sort of replicate your brain in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
There are dozens of really interesting companies exhibiting. So if you're just curious of what's going on in the state, if you want to get a job at one of these things, if you're interested in starting your own thing and like understanding what does this take, if you're looking to fundraise, we have something called the Fundraising Forum where we have investors on site that take 30-minute meetings with entrepreneurs to help give advice and feedback about how their pitch is. We have on-stage speech coaching, so someone who analyzes the pitches and gives the speech coaching required on communication for the pitch. So it's all things tech and entrepreneurship. It's a lot of fun, and the whole thing ends with fireworks at the end of the night and right after a happy hour. So it's a good time. But I say it's like the most fun business event to go to. But it's business first.
It sounds awesome. I mean, spending my prior life to this, going to a lot of like real estate conferences and stuff like that. There was never fireworks.
Yeah,
it was usually a bar.
Bars, yeah.
But all those things. Because I was going to ask, if someone like has to have an idea or whatever it is, not necessarily. You go like kind of experience it and jobs, speeches, speaking, like all that kind of stuff. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and typically it's you might be an early stage entrepreneur, which by the way could be of any age. Most successful entrepreneurs by the math are 44, I think, is the founding age. So it's not like there are plenty of young people there, and that's great. But I don't want people to think if you're, that we mean necessarily you have to be young to go to this. Not at all. There are also lots of corporates who are interested in innovation who are walking the floor and listening to talks to just understand what's going on because they want to make sure that they've got a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So it's really all stage of business, but there is a heavy focus on early stage startups.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
And it's fun. We have a good time.
Yeah. No, I'm excited because I want to go and
we'll make sure you're there.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I am there.
We should set you up with a podcasting setup there too.
I do that. I'll talk all day.
Great. Done.
Cool. Love it.
Come to Propelify and you'll meet Mike.
Yeah, right. If you haven't already. So if people want to learn more about, let's do Propelify first. They want to get a ticket. They want to do whatever. Like, how do they do that?
So Propelify is propelify.com, Propelify. And I said earlier that you can use the coupon code Mike and you'll get a free ticket. There's some upgrades and things if you want VIP, but we can get you in the door for free. And Tech United is techunited.co. And I wanted to mention, I said before we changed the name from the New Jersey Tech Council. And that is because, and it's similar to what we do at Propelify, the magic happens when you unite the tech community and when you bring communities together in general. And if you look at our logo, you'll see that when the H from tech and the U from United come together, there's this little shoot of color that comes out. We call that our catalyst. That's meant to represent the ideas and the variety of people who come together and the energy that happens when you actually unite a community in a certain industry. And that's very much what this is about. It's very open to people. What really matters is you make things happen, that you're not someone who sits on the sidelines and you have the grit and determination and ambition to make amazing things happen. That's the spirit of this community, and you'd fit in well, certainly at Propelify with that, and absolutely in the Tech United community at large.
Yeah. Tech United is it like membership based?
It's a membership based organization, yeah. So hopefully people will consider being members.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think they should. Because I think like as we were talking about this, obviously there's like the clear, like you mentioned the mission, and like a clear, like almost like avatar of like who would be a part of it. But I think, like there are opportunities for people to be involved because you don't know like what the, like, who kind of thing.
Yeah.
Meeting people and kind of, generating ideas and different things like that. I think that's really important, and kind of collaborating with communities and getting different communities together and meeting people that you otherwise would never meet, because who knows what happens from there.
That's the idea. And when we talked before about all businesses have a tech or tech enablement component to it. Even what you're doing here, we've had Gary Vaynerchuk speak. He was our speaker the first year, and if you follow any of his work, he talks about distribution strategy and media. Like, that's the kind of stuff that whatever your industry, I believe there's something there that you can take away from this. That is, how can you build faster, smarter, right? Like, you're distributing on digital platforms. How do you take this long form interview? This is what Gary talks a lot about, which I don't know if you've seen his stuff, but would highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But chop it up into 63 pieces of content. So you got this video, you got this audio, you got the short form clips, etc. You could, we're going to take a photo. You got a still piece of content. Like, in your world, reach is the game.
Yeah.
And so at a place like Propelify, it's not, I think some people think this is just people, it's hardcore circuit breaker or circuit board kind of tech or coding tech. It's tech broadly, and how does software affect society and industry? And it touches a variety of topics.
Yeah. No, I love it. I can't wait to go. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on with us and sharing your story and the short story of, New Jersey tech and AI and, entrepreneurism and all that kind of stuff. I think it was great.
Appreciate you having me on. You keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we'll make sure that we put all your links in the show notes so people can go click along with the coupon code for the ticket, and we'll kind of blast that out before this episode comes out so people know about it and can, get a ticket and be there.
That'd be great.
Kind of mix it up with everybody. That'd be cool. So those will be in the show notes. We'll also put greensforthegardenState.com, which is the website for the show. So you can get all of our episodes, and we've been honestly crushing it with episodes this year as far as like the guests that we've had on.
Seems like it.
The stories that we've told, it's been pretty dope. So this has been the Greens for the Garden State podcast, powered by the New Jersey Lottery. I'm Mike Ham. He was Aaron Price, CEO of Tech United New Jersey. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Mike, we do a lot of high fives in the Tech United community, so we got to end on the high five.
Okay, cool.
Boom.